Today, we're going to talk about some of the effects that growing up poor or having money problems could have to you as an adult. Would you consider yourself growing up having those issues?
Yes, I would. I think a lot of people would, because I think that's one of the things everybody's parents fight about.
Yeah.
12 rounds between mom and dad.
No, seriously though, growing up, I was exposed to these arguments, and even though they try, I do believe that most parents would try to shelter you from that, but you still aren't aware, right? Like you're
Yeah.
not kids are not really stupid. They feel that tension that having financial problems could have for the entire household.
I think it's too hard to hide to, I don't remember my parents ever specifically fighting about money or anything, but I always knew there was money problems.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an unspoken problem, like some witch, like in a horror movie. Like you just don't say your name and you're gonna be okay, but you're not gonna be okay.
Yeah, and there are research showing too about the effects of, growing up in poverty, growing up poor could have to children. The most common thing though that happened growing up poor is that you either become a very bad spender, like two extremes, a very bad spender or very frugal. And, those two extremes it's not good. More often than not, those are the common products of growing up poor.
I was gonna say that the only good extreme is when you're snowboarding. Now that's a good kind of extreme.
What's snowboarding?
Snowboard. It's like skateboarding but on snow.
Oh.
It's literally like a skateboard on the snow.
I did grow up with snow. You can't blame me.
You were poor with
There's
snow.
no snow in Philippine TV. So let's talk about what happens to you if you're in the other extreme first, like being a very bad spender. So one of the things that you develop as an adult is that impulsive buying. You just become an impulsive spender because you're trying to satisfy the needs that you weren't able to as a kid.
I think a lot of that might come down to what you're an adult and you finally have that money. So you're going to make sure you always spend that money on things that you feel like you may have deserved as a kid, even if it's more of an adult version of it. Something like a toy becomes a collectible when you're older.
The latest iPhone.
You just want to make up for lost time, and I think that's a common thing that people have beyond just money. Like Michael Jackson just trying to always be a little kid.
Yeah.
Amusement park in his backyard.
Yeah, for sure. You're trying to satisfy something that wasn't satisfied at an age that it should have been. Going deep here. Another thing is that you keep the bad money habits that you were exposed to as a kid. For example, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul.
Peter's the one that has the money and he's willing to lend it, and Paul's the one you owe the money to. That's always how it is. Isn't the Philippines something he's like Juan and Jose?
Something like that. Yeah, so one of the bad money habits that I was exposed to as a kid is the constant borrowing. That's just a recipe for disaster. When debt is ruling your life, that's just gonna put you in a very deep hole that's very hard to get out of.
I wonder if a lot of the adults that do that are that they're exposed at a young age to debt and borrowing, and they just see that as something normal. Because I think a lot of people do that, carry credit card debt, and just think, oh, everybody has it. It's not a big deal. Let me just pay the minimum. So I think it gets normalized as you're a kid, and you don't think twice about it being a problem.
Exactly. That's just the life that you grew up living, so you wouldn't know any better. And that brings me to the other point. Growing up poor, it's possible that you didn't have any exposure to how to properly manage your money or financial literacy. A lot of people are financially illiterate. They wouldn't even know the basics of how to balance a budget. Even as something as simple as that could be lacking in your life if you grew up having money problems and not having adults setting a good example for you. Well, you know what? There comes a point in your life when you're an adult and you can stop using your childhood as an excuse, but also.
But I don't think it's just like your childhood necessarily. It's just a habit you got into, and something like money where there's no real right or wrong way to handle it. It's just more, this way is going to have a much better outcome than the other one. People who just don't get that guidance when they're young.
Yeah,
They're
even in
just gonna,
schools.
you're just gonna be completely lost at like an adult thing. You wouldn't believe like how many adults ask me for like tax advice, and I don't know what I'm doing with taxes like everybody else. But people just don't know that stuff, and it's scary to a lot of people.
Yeah, like the concept of interest, like they see, oh, a bigger number, this must be good, right? Like, and, you know, that's just scary.
Yeah, and I think even with the access to the internet, people just don't do the research or take the time to do it. And a lot of the answers are pretty simple.
Yeah, like in the age of the internet, it's easily accessible, those information, if you just really want to. But then again, if that's the only way of living that you know, why would you even venture out to find this information? So
Yeah, you don't even
it's
know you're
really-
doing something wrong.
Exactly. Growing up poor, you might also have this tendency to be materialistic because of insecurity, you know, because of trying to fulfill the desires that you weren't able to as a kid. Some people would try to justify it as you only live once, you know, so I'm gonna buy whatever I can right now. Well, I still can because money could be gone at any moment. That's what happened to me as a kid, you know, money just so easy to vanish, so I'm gonna spend it while I have it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are super materialistic either grew up very poor and now they have the means, or they grew up wealthy and they just don't know any better how to handle money. But that's like a whole different topic. But
maybe materialistic is too strong of a word too. It's like it also connects to that concept that people buy stuff to impress other people because, you know, as a kid, some poor kids sadly are bullied because they're poor, you know, they don't have new clothes or even might be dirty clothes because their washer broke or something, you know, their parents could afford. But it creates this insecurity in you that you just start trying to heal with material things.
I think there's also a lot of people who, as they get older, they grew up poor, they stay poor, they continue the bad habits, but then they'll still buy the things to try to impress other people, like especially like a car or something that can be seen. You go out there, you try to buy a fancy cell phone, stuff like that to impress other people, where you're just masking the problem.
On the other opposite end that could happen when you grow up poor is that you're very guarded. You become very guarded. You become very frugal with money. And it comes, I think, from a place of fear that the money would disappear. You might be already financially stable. You might have a good job, a very good amount in your bank account, but you're still going to be very cheap, very frugal because of that fear of having without.
Is you've experienced it, and I can relate to this one more. You've experienced that, and you don't want to go back and experience it again.
I could kind of relate to this more too. I think I'm less strict now with myself, but I still consider myself very frugal because I still have this fear, you know, that of going without. I just want that stability, you know. Related to that, another side effect of growing up poor is that you hoard stuff, material things, even food. Some people would have that feeling of security if they see a full fridge or a full pantry. You know, you might even have that as a language of love if you're a homemaker or you're the breadwinner, because you don't want your kids to go without. So that's why you tend to have this sense of achievement once you fill the fridge or the pantry.
I think that's it comes down to, again, you want to feel that security, and something like food is an absolute necessity.
Exactly.
Is there like anything else though you can think of that people might like tend to hoard?
Anything really, like maybe rewashing frozen bags. You know, if you're really other episode of Extreme Cheapskate that we watched, they're hanging a paper towel to dry even though it was already dirty just to use it again.
My favorite one in the show is the guy that makes the family the gifts, and he like gives them like just the worst gifts ever made of like plastic bags.
Yeah, you hoard these things that most people would just throw away because they know that they can replace it. But if you have that strong fear of going without, then that's your coping mechanism. You hoard.
I wonder if there's any other, I'm sure there are other reasons for like hoarders, but I feel like somebody that's hoarding, that really comes down to, even if it's not like a money thing, just the fact of going without or not having the thing there, even if it has no real value or purpose. I think it really comes down to you didn't have something as a kid, and chances are if you didn't have something as a kid, it was as a result of money. Not always, but I think that's gotta be one of the more common reasons why.
So another thing that could come out of growing up poor is that you power through discomfort and inconveniences more than you should have. Say, for example, you're suffering from this very painful stomach or whatever, but you're just trying to ignore it or treat it with home remedies instead of going to the doctor because you don't want to spend money, because you have this fear of letting go of money.
I think that goes a lot deeper, because I can relate to this one too. I think when you grow up poor, a lot of things might not get fixed around the house. It's too costly, and you just kind of get used to it. You get into it's not even complacency, but you realize that maybe it's not the biggest of deals. It can build up a little bit of toughness, but sometimes it gets taken a little too far where things are fixable. You can afford to fix them, but just in your back of your head, oh, it's not necessary. I mean, my house growing up had plenty of things wrong with it that were just never fixed. We'd have to go down to the bottom floor just to turn on the water because it would leak if it was turned on for too long. So something like that, which in retrospect probably couldn't have cost that much money. It just wasn't something that was never fixed in the house. And now as like an adult, I wouldn't let something like that pass. But something smaller, I wouldn't think twice about it. I'd be like, so what, big deal. It doesn't really bother me.
I don't know if you'd consider this a good example. Walking 2 miles to some destination instead of paying for a bus fare or maybe Uber. That's like an inconvenience you're willing to do because you don't want to spend money.
It's a very personal attack. It's not a big deal to walk. Buses are too expensive for what they are. You have to sit next to somebody, some stranger.
Walking 2 miles in summer heat.
Good exercise, you get to wave hello to the neighbors, you get to be seen in public.
Yeah, and you
nice
drench with sweat right when you get home.
Oh, that feels good. The cooling effect of a deep summer sweat, the extra layer of perspiration. It's just something you can't get anywhere else.
Or having like a broken phone screen, like phones are expensive, especially back then when, it's a different world back then. Phones are pretty expensive, I think. And if you have a broken screen, you learn to live with it instead of asking your parents for a new phone, which is, oh my God, it's going to lead to a whole...
I wonder now though, I feel like we're so attached to our phones, it's impossible to access like a phone with a cracked screen. Like you'd rather not have any phone at all.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of...
I've seen them too, but I feel like now we're just even more attached to our phones. We do everything on it.
Yeah. So those are the effects of growing up poor that you might experience as an adult. These are the common behaviors that is very relatable, especially if you grew up exposed to money troubles.
I'm sure most people are on too close to one extreme or the other.
And a lot of the stuff that we mentioned are things that we actually relate to.
Yeah.
You would have a much more fruitful life and enjoyable life if you find a good balance between the two, where you're not too frugal or too much of a spender. That's just something that we all have to work on, I guess, even us.
Yep. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe.
Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.